What are the definitely difficult things that any journalist faces while switching to PR or COPCOM?
To be honest with you, today everyone can talk a lot about strategy, but one must remember that strategy gets eaten for breakfast by execution.
The essence remains the same, but the biggest change that is required is the mindset.
Ability to have communication and so on, these come naturally to people who are genuinely journalists.
First thing is, most journalists don't understand client services.
An inherent interest in learning new things basically propelled me in my journey that eased my path from, say, sports to business.
I really feel that people should take up journalism before they move into public relations or corporate communication.
The best learnings come from your rivals. Going back to sports, Sachin Tendulkar obviously was doing his own practice and nets, but obviously he was also watching Brian Lara bat.
Hello and welcome to the show Indian Media with Dhiren and Experts. Here we discuss trends and opportunities in the media and entertainment sector that impact careers and businesses. I am your host Dhiren. Today we will discuss how can journalists move to PR or COPCOM roles, a question that crosses the mind sooner or later. Joining us on the show are two media professionals who started off as journalists and later moved on to PR and COPCOM. Please welcome Ushang Sheth and Sumanto Bhattacharya. Before we discuss the topic, please tell us our audience about your career journey and what you do at present.
Hi, Dhiren. Thank you for this opportunity. Hi, Sumanto as well. I am Ushang Sheth. I have around 15 years of experience in public relations, corporate communications, and journalism. I actually started my career earlier in financial services when I after my MBA in 2009. Around 2011, I joined CNBC TV 18 as a management trainee with the research team, and soon you grew the ranks. Over the next 4 or 5 years I was with the organization. From there, I moved to Z Business, and again, as a journalist over there, I covered the banking and financial services beat. And after doing that for around 5.5 6 years, I joined India's one of the largest and leading PR firm, Ad Factors PR, again in the BFSI vertical. And continuing my journey in PR, I moved to Genesis BCW. Yet again, India's largest private sector bank, one of the largest private broking firm, legal firms, and so on. And post that, after almost being in PR and journalism for almost 13, 14 years, I moved into corporate communications.
My journey was kind of it was serendipity, if I may put it that way, because I started my career with a news agency in Delhi. Then I moved to Mumbai to work for a tabloid. Then I got into a news channel, but I was always a sports journalist. And after that, I reached a point in 2010 where I thought uh, I wasn't happy doing journalism, the route that it was taking. So I decided to take a break, and that is when this opportunity to work for a cricket franchise in the IPL came about. So a meeting happened, and luckily everything worked out. They had me to work on the sports properties, the cricket franchise and the Formula One team, which they owned at that point in time. But slowly, my mandate also included across group companies, which included Alcobev and aviation. So that's how I basically got my grounding in COPCOM. And it was a very swift move from journalism to the corporate side of things. So after that, I have worked in startups. I have worked in a solar energy firm for a very brief instant. I have also advised financial clients, and now currently I'm in the BFSI sector with a corporate insurance player in Hyderabad.
Sumanto,
So
you're
that's what
not the
my journey
only
has been in
sports journalist who has gone from covering sports to into BFSI or totally unrelated fields. And it's a good thing to have. And the first question that comes to anyone's mind is how mentally one should prepare, what are the easier things, and what are the definitely difficult things that any journalist faces while switching to PR or COPCOM.
From my experience, I would think the skill set remains the same, the essence remains the same, but the biggest change that is required is the mindset. Because when you are a journalist, you are used to stories being pitched to you, you're used to getting information, you're used to being, if I may use the word, being pampered by PR agencies and by COPCOM people. That, and then suddenly the status is just kind of reversed. So now you are in the situation where you have to have that mindset of servicing a client. I mean, that is something that a journalist takes time to basically adjust to this new reality, is what I'd say. Ushang, please chime in with your views on this, because I love to hear what you have to say.
So, completely agree with what you are saying, Sumanto, here. But, just there are a couple of points to add to what Sumanto said. It is more about the focus. When we were journalists, the focus was more on coming out with storytelling, which is focused on the public, right? They are the key stakeholders and so on. As a journalist, you are focusing on larger picture, the larger perspective and things like that. But when you move into corporate communication, you have to be more focused in terms of telling the story of your organization itself, right? As a PR professional, it is about the various clients and so on, but it is more pertinent to what you do, right? So that's one of the big difference which I see when it comes to between, say, journalism versus a PR and corporate communication. Again, the audience per se, in terms of when you are a PR professional, it is more towards the stakeholders, right? So it includes your own management itself. Then you are talking about your investors, right? Your shareholders per se. Like if you're working with a listed company, it is all about wealth creation for your investors as well. So your communication is targeted towards that. But when it comes to journalism, it is more fact based, right? So it is completely from narrating a story which is absolutely factual in nature as a journalist versus a story which you want to curate, narrate, and then go out in the public domain about your organization. So that is, there's a thin line per se, is what I would put over here when it comes to PR versus journalism or corporate communications,
The
and
stakeholders
that's a
also
small difference.
the stakeholders also increase. I mean,
Yes,
from compared to journalism to
true.
See, first thing is most journalists don't understand client servicing. Like when I moved from journalism to PR, client servicing was so new to me. I took my own sweet time to learn about it or to basically understand it. So, how was your experience about it?
I was, I mean, it has again got a lot to do with the person and the traits that you have. So, journalism is kind of irreverent. Journalism is irreverent. I mean, if you're not irreverent, then you cannot be true to the profession of journalism. So, when you bring that into PR and COPCOM, it's a much more sanitized environment, is how I would put it. And that reflects behavior in action in your work and everything. So that's a huge switch that one has to make and has to adapt to. That initial phase was a bit difficult for me, because I'm like, okay, this is how it's supposed to be done, and this is what is actually the best course of action. But then I had to make allowances for what, say, a client has to think, or what in a PR scenario, in a PR agency scenario, or on the COPCOM side, marketing is very closely aligned with the COPCOM function. So what are the needs of marketing, or say the sales team? So then you start making allowances. You start learning that, okay, they may have a purpose. You are the domain expert. You are the subject matter expert. They may or may not know. They may have some idea. They may not have any idea. They may come from a place where they have their sense of how things should be. Then you start learning of how to get all of them together on the same pitch, and you work towards a common good.
Ushang, how was your experience about learning about this concept called client servicing?
So honestly, I had a very good positive experience. I mean, I would literally put like both my experience when it came to both the organizations, rather Ad Factors and Genesis BCW. Both organization had a people mindset, right? Like you work with so many people inside as well as outside. So that was good. Otherwise, as a person, I've always been an extrovert. So I love talking to people. I have no issues doing that as well, right? So that is one of the aspects which did really help me. What I feel is other aspect is like, people skill, ability to have communication and so on. These come naturally to people who are genuinely journalists, right? I mean, who are passionate of being journalists, because one of the job role is where you are required to interview and interact with so many people. So these could be right from corporates, from like, managing directors and CEOs and so on, and even the corporate communication professionals, the PR people and so on, to, work out your story, which you wish to narrate to the audience, right? So you have to do lots of things towards that element, lots of communication with multiple stakeholders as well, right? When you are a journalist. Now, You move from journalism to public relations or corporate communication. I think the story still remains the same, but your target audience now changes a bit, right? Now you are shifting your focus from, as a journalist, your target audience was, your source or the management of companies or the corporate communications professional and so on. In COPCOM, somewhere it is now the journalist who is your target audience, right? And honestly, there are many a times we come across this whole idea that journalist is arrogant and things like that. I strongly believe that at PR professional and communications professional, we need to understand that there are lots of people who are chasing journalists for their own stories as well, right? So in this point of time, it is very important that we say as PR professional, when we are working with clients, or COPCOM professional working with a particular organization, try to create a messaging which is relevant for them, which is strong enough for them to see interest in it, and rather write about it or talk about it. So there's lots of homework which PR and corporate communication professional also need to do. And it's very simple, rather, I would say. If your narrative is clear, if your story is clear, what you want to communicate, there is lots of clarity and thought behind it, then journalists are also happy to take it forward. It is as simple as that. So, I mean, I don't see client servicing as a rocket science, because, to be honest with you, today everyone can talk a lot about strategy, but one must remember that strategy gets eaten for breakfast by execution, right? And that's where client servicing comes into place, right? So it's like clarity of thought, which is going to take you places, right? So personally, I never found it really tough to move from journalism to PR, and rather in terms of client servicing or people. Yeah.
Taking off from Ushang, then one point that I would like to make here is that what helps is transparency and honesty in your dealings. Even if you have worked with them, they may have been your co-workers, they may have been your people from other newspapers or news channels from in any other sector, but you have worked with them, or if you know them, what works in every case is as long as you're being honest and you're being transparent with them. I mean, tell them
I
what
think
can happen, what cannot happen,
yeah, I
and
think a
they
biggest
appreciate
thing
that.
is setting the
They keep
expectation right.
yeah, yeah. So there are times when they would do something, access becomes easy. They may answer your call because of your relationship in the past, but that's not a guarantee whether what you want them to do, whether that will happen or not, because then they also have a job to do. So they will be doing it on the merits of the story that you're pitching, or whatever the matter at that point in time, because they are also going to take a dispassionate view. I mean, it has happened that we have been friends, we have been talking about something, but somehow it did not work out. But that doesn't mean that the relationships would get soured just because of one story or did not get through. So that maturity is something that becomes very important when you're dealing with people that you may have worked in the past, because the stakes just changed for me, but for them it remains the same. They still have to be true and honest to what they are doing, and I have to be true and honest to what I'm doing.
So when a journalist decides that now I have to move to PR, there are certain things that they need to prepare. First, knowing about your sector, that's one thing. But how do they prepare for the interview part? Because that's a major factor. You may know everything about the sector, but when it comes to client servicing, or there could be other things as well. So how did you guys prepare?
I did get the opportunity to work as a journalist, and which required lots of focus in terms of storytelling, and did involve lots of research towards it, because you cannot go out there with a half-baked narrative or a story which is not clear. And then, to be honest with you, I really feel that people should take up journalism before they move into public relations or corporate communication. It's a complete personal opinion. But the fact is, when we are talking with the management, the MDs and CEOs of organization as journalists and so on, you will realize that you may have a certain perspective about certain things, and so and like about certain topics and so on, right? But when you speak with these people who are the leaders of various organizations, you realize that they of course, their sense about and understanding about these elements or certain topics will be much higher than many of us, right? So you do tend to learn and understand newer and better and more powerful perspectives and so on. So I mean, as a part of my career itself, like as a journalist, I did get to interact with so many of these leaders across the, and I kept my path clear, right? I always wanted to be in BFSI. So when I moved towards PR as well, the tendency were all the questions were relevant from the perspective of what is happening in the banking and financial services. So again, it became pretty simple in that way, because the questions were relevant, something which I understood. There are a couple of things which a person needs to imbibe in themselves will be a storytelling mindset, right? You need to imbibe in yourself research skills. You need to imbibe in yourself some level of writing skills as well. Because all these things put together will make you an asset for organization which you go to. And above all, a person needs to be confident, right? I mean, what you are talking about, and that confidence will come purely if you have read about it, if you have researched about it. So that's the key. I mean, like, go prepared for any interview. I mean, and then speak the narrative which you want the opposite person to also hear. It should not be like you are playing by their rule and keeping the ball in their court. You need to move your conversation in such a way that you take
Mm.
the whole communication towards your comfort zone.
Right.
And that will come through lots of research and lots of
I
interview.
think that also comes through the fact that
I mean,
if one
unlike Ushang,
understands what strategy means, and I'll come to that point, but before that, I want to hear about Sumanto's experience of how he prepared, because he moved from sports, but then he diversified into completely something unrelated. So first, I want to know how you prepared for it and how you persuaded the other person that being a sports journalist, sports PR, I'm still very valuable for BFSI.
so, I mean, unlike Ushang, my path was like kind of very different. I mean, as I said right at the beginning, I mean, it was almost serendipity for me. I mean, I stumbled into it. When I gave my first interview, actually to switch from journalism to PR, I did not even have the time to prepare because it was arranged at the notice of a couple of hours, maybe, or 3, 4 hours, like at the best. So I did not have to think because I simply did not have the time. It was, I just told them what I knew about sports and what happens. But what I realized is that when any PR agency or COPCOM person is interviewing a journalist, what they are primarily looking for is to have a person who can help the agency or the organization or the corporate organization to understand what a journalist wants. That I think is the nub of things. If you can bring that perspective into your role, whether in an agency setup or a corporate setup, that if you can give them those nuggets of information, though those nuggets from your experience of what works for a journalist and what doesn't, what would make a story, what wouldn't, what strategy to deal with, how to preempt things that they may say or that they may write, or their questions, or updating or escalating your client or your stakeholders in a corporate setup. So these are the things I guess that they are looking for. As far as my switch from sports journalism to sports PR and then to because I happen to be lucky enough or fortunate enough to actually be part of a diversified conglomerate, which actually gave me the option of working across different sectors, and that is where I learned the ropes of COPCOM, because get the chance to interact with CXOs, you get the chance to interact with the promoters or the chairman of the companies, and then you see different people work in different ways, and then you pick up things and you figure out what works for some may not work for the other stakeholder. This is the ethos of one particular group company, which may be slightly different from the other group company. Someone may be more responsive, someone may be not. For some, media is a very important part of things, for some it may not be. So it all depends, and then you try to figure out what works for them. And an inherent curiosity, I would say, and an inherent interest in learning new things basically propelled me in my journey, that eased my path from, say, sports to business, where I dealt with aviation, I dealt with Alcobev fertilizers, from there to startups, from startups to, for a very brief period, a renewable energy company. Because that openness, and what also helps is if your personal interests are somewhere aligned with your professional interest, that helps a lot, I guess.
True, that is true. And coming about learning, both of you said this, knowing what the journalist wants is one of the key things. Knowing what the client wants or the stakeholders want, that's also a key thing. It would fall under the umbrella of strategy. So, how did you go about learning strategy? Because as journalists, we are trained about this is the story, we should go about this, or we plan a series, or we plan a campaign. But strategy goes much beyond that. So, how did you guys chart it that way? How did you guys learn about strategy?
Strategy, see, for me, strategy was when they were planned things. Obviously, you have the time to strategize. But in my career, I have been in situations where I do not have the time to basically prepare any strategy. And it happens, both of you would agree from your experience during crisis comms. You may have a playbook ready, but whether you have the time to follow that playbook or not is a different matter altogether. You may have the luxury at times, you may not have the luxury at times. You may have clients receptive to it, or you may have stakeholders, internal stakeholders receptive to it, or you may not. It depends on everyone's appetite basically. And Ushang can come in to say whether, I mean, how he perceives this. For a campaign, you can strategize. You can sit with the marketing team, you can sit with the sales team, you can take their input, you can take their feedback, you can see what the business prerogatives are, you can sit with them, and then you can create or craft a strategy according to the business need. That is one aspect of it, but there are times when you cannot. So to give an example, I mean, I have never done hyper local PR, I mean, I've never done rural PR, and I've had discussions about this from Ushang since he has worked in the BFSI sector, and I needed to take some input. So Ushang is someone that I have reached out to in the past. So that was actually something completely new for me. That strategy, to figure out the strategy, what you need to know is first and foremost, know the space that you are operating in. That becomes paramount. Unless you know, I mean, I came from very different sectors and then come into BFSI, work in crop insurance, which is way out of anything that I've done previously. Then for me, it becomes very important to learn the sector that I am in. If I don't know my sector, if I don't know my own story, I'm not gonna convey that story to an outsider who may be a journalist, who may be an investor, who may be a shareholder. I can't convey that story if I don't know my own story. So it becomes paramount to know the space that you are in. That is where your strategy would flow. You would have your nuts and bolts. Then you take your stakeholders, like your marketing guys, your sales guys, what their prerogatives are, what the business prerogatives are. Then you weave those things in your PR campaign, because a PR campaign or a PR strategy cannot exist in isolation. I mean, I may love something and that may be great, but if that is not adding any value to what the company wants to achieve, then my strategy is no good. Then I can keep that strategy in my laptop on a Word document or a PPT or
No,
an
but
Excel
my
sheet and
question
be
is
happy about it.
mainly about how did you go about learning about strategy? And I think Ushang will agree with me when it comes to getting inputs from other department, that's very difficult. All you have to rely on is what you can see, find from public domain or from some random conversations, and then bring them all together and then make your own recommendations that why don't you do this as well? Ushang, you want to weigh
Again,
in
going
on this?
back to what Ushang said, previous question,
I'll let him
it,
finish. Yeah. Go ahead,
it,
Bhattacharya.
it helps to talk to people, which Ushang said.
So, Dhiren, I mean, it's a very simple concept. I mean, lots of people, lots of organization give a lots of weightage to the whole aspect of strategy, right? Keep it simple. I would rather say it is like, what is marketing, right? Marketing is simply defined as you are trying to understand the need of your target audience, right? And then trying to come out with a product or a proposition to possibly cater to that particular need. What is strategy? It's the same thing, right? And where does the strategy come from? And again, go back to the whole idea of research itself, because that becomes the core for every journalist, PR professional, corporate communication professional at any given point of time, right? If you have your research right, it come up with a strategy or come up with a, any kind of an offering. That is very important in terms of, say, as a corporate communication professional, PR professional. It is very important for us to communicate. We are corporate communications professionals, so communication is the key. But here you need to develop relationships as well with the journalist. It cannot be all the time like, where you want your stories to just come out. You need to help them as well. They're also looking for inputs and so on. But believe me, the best inputs and information you will get, which will help you to create a strategy, will come from your biggest target audience, who are the journalists, right? So understand what are their needs. And you are representing a particular organization or particular client, and you are in the center of it as a PR professional or comms professional. You are even communicating it client per se and their spokespeople. So understand their requirements as well, and try to create a handshake between both these stakeholders. The information which is coming from one stakeholder, is it relevant for the another stakeholder or not? Now you need to create handshakes. You need to curate your content in such a way that it is useful from both the stakeholders' perspective and not just focused on one of the stakeholders. So it is very simple. It is very simple. What is the need and what are you offering? That is the basis of the strategy. Now learning about it is simply by doing things. You learn by doing things. It cannot be like strategy is going to come to you. You wake up one morning and you have become a strategist over here. It's not going to be possible. It's going to happen towards over a period of time, right? You need to screw up. You need to make mistakes. You need to do things in you do something wrong, and then you have communication with your stakeholders and understand from them what didn't really work out. And it's a journey. It's a process which you need to follow. You need to do it day in day out, and that's where the strategy comes out. But as I said in my previous response, execution eats strategy for breakfast. So in our business, it is very important that you do focus on building your relationship, your stakeholders, so that you get enough information to pass it on to maybe say the journalist or vice versa and so on. That's the best strategy, because at the end of the day, as a client, my management, as where I would be working as a journalist, it's about that story which is coming in print, or that story which is being spoken on television. For my management, where I'm, or the organization I represent, or any one of us represents, it's always about the story which comes out finally. So that's about it. I think it's by doing. You have to keep on doing things to understand strategy. It cannot come to you in a day.
It's
Okay.
finding that middle ground, and at times the ability to say no also helps when
Maybe I couldn't have said it better. Yeah.
any unjust demands are being made from either of the stakeholders on either side of the spectrum, because finding that middle ground is imperative.
Now, both of you are in COPCOM and both of you have worked in PR also, and you've seen the unreasonable demands coming from either sides. So, what would help a journalist switch careers? Can they directly go into COPCOM without any experience of PR, or PR experience helps?
See, the answer to this is yes. I mean, that's you can go from journalism to corporate communications, right? But uh it is most of the companies you're working with will have an PR agency to support you, right? So it becomes all about giving directions and things like that. But I would also say that it is good to move maybe from journalism, you go to PR and then into corporate communications, because you understand one of the things, which is the exposure which you get as a PR professional after, like, maybe after journalism is huge amount of exposure, without a doubt. Then you move into PR and you're not really working on a single client. You're working on multiple clients. You're working on, say, 4, 5, 6 clients. You're working with various teams. You have teams above you, you have people below you in terms of reporting structure and so on. So that also imbibes a lot of learning for you. It also brings in lots of sense of maturity and understanding other people, which is very important. You can directly go to Copcom, right? I mean, because at the end of the day, it is all about storytelling. It is having your narrative being put across to your stakeholders through the media. So it can work. But if you directly move from journalism to corporate communication, there is a tendency that you will be highly dependent on your PR organization or your PR partner, right? And there is a possibility that there can be communications which can be literally one-sided, whereas a Copcom professional, you are learning things only from your PR professional rather than guiding them. That can happen. I'm not saying that that is something which will surely happen or will always happen, but it's a possibility, right? But with that said, I strongly believe journalists work really hard, PR professionals work really hard, Copcom people are also doing lots of work and so on. But when it comes to PR professional, as I said at the beginning, they are working with 4, 5, 6 clients and so on. Corporate communicators should work closely with PR and look at them as their partners and extended teams, rather than somebody, organization you are paying to do the work on your behalf. So it's all about partnership there as well, Dhiren. If you do some level of PR or do work with PR organization before you move into corporate communication, that factor will come to you, right? Where you will
You will be
understand the
able to
challenges of
empathize
the
more in
organization.
that case.
You will be able to empathize more. You will be able to understand the things they also go through. And everyone has their own challenges and things they have to face wherever they are. Every one of us had to face it, right? So as you said, you can be more empathetic if you have been through this particular journey. And I could completely be wrong also. Yeah. I don't know how things work
I
for
don't think
everyone.
So
at the end of the day
experiences
it
can
comes
be
much
various,
down
and
to the journeys that. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Like here, my journey again has been different from Ushang because even though my switch from journalism to COPCOM basically happened through PR agency, but because as I said, it was just a 3 month stint and almost on secondment, I was working directly with the client. So I spent relatively very little time actually a PR agency. But what it does is that, and I totally agree with Ushang here, that when you have made the switch directly, then you are also trying to learn how you need to get the best out of your PR agency if you have made that switch directly. Because you, as a journalist, you may have a view of what you think PR agencies do or what PR agency people, I mean, PR professionals are doing. And if you directly jump onto the COPCOM side, again, you miss that view because you think, oh, this is how it's supposed to go. For example, a day to day operational thing. I mean, it's not every day that you're issuing a press release. It's not every day that you're organizing a media event where you're inviting media or you're not having a press conference or you're not having a, say, a thought leadership piece pushed out somewhere or you're not organizing an interview with your CXO. So to do the day to day jobs of what a PR agency actually does, it helps to know that process also. Because if you make that jump directly, then you're kind of one aspect of the profession kind of remains behind the curtains, if I may put it that way.
no, that is true. I think in COPCOM, it's not only about getting press releases published. It's much more than that. So can you throw some light on that? Like, what are those functions which you felt are not visible from a PR perspective?
The biggest would be, just to give anecdotal references, would be say PR agency rep would be reaching out to the COPCOM person saying, okay, this journalist has reached out with this. It may be negative or neutral at best, or it may lead to a negative story because they may have got a whiff of some development that is happening or something. And then the PR rep, because the journalists would have reached out to them before, they in turn have reached out to the COMCOM person, and the COPCOM person in turn has escalated it to the management. Now, especially in cases of, say, when a merger and acquisition is on the offing, or say someone wants to divest, say, a particular arm, or someone wants to get into a share buyback thing, it could be any of these and whatever. But if there's somehow this information has gone out or some investment is coming in from somewhere or someone is buying some equity, whatever, so they would reach out. But the PR agency rep may not have the view that, okay, the management of their client may be actually busy, and because something is in the offing, they don't want to even say anything to their COPCOM person simply because they may be barred by the regulators to say anything or do anything. So there are times when a PR person may not have that visibility, and then they may be thinking that, okay, I have reached out to the COPCOM team and they're not getting back with the information that I need to go out to the journalist because the journalist is after me and messaging me or calling me for this piece of information.
Vishang, you had any experience like this? That when you switched to COPCOM and you realized, oh, this I never knew.
I would consider myself pretty lucky because my journey throughout has been decently good. I mean, the kind of people I've worked with have been always pretty supportive, and I strongly believe that you should work hard. You should put in the best effort and your best foot forward. You may succeed, you may not succeed, but efforts are more important than success or failure, right? But as a COPCOM professional as well, as I said, right, it's all about your people skill. You have to be a people's person, and when you are saying if we want to call ourselves corporate communicators, we cannot be really arrogant over here. We cannot be like, who is like, he needs me, he will come to me, or she needs me, she will come to me kind of person, right? It's about making friends. It's about developing good relationship and rapport with people. I strongly believe journalists are humans. So are the management and the organization you work with, and so are the PR professionals as well. So why not talk to them? Why not try to develop a rapport with them as well? the management or the people who I've worked with, one of the things which I really understood was it is important to communicate with those people and put your requirements forth as well. These people do want to help you as well, right? It's what my job is really going to benefit them more than just me, right? It is about you being a people's person. Go out there, speak open, be speak your mind, but of course speak sensible stuff. Don't like randomly blurt things out of your mouth. So like you have to do your fact check cleared, and like your research done before you're having communication with somebody senior in an organization, because they may see you as somebody who is irrelevant if you go and speak to them, and the conversation which you are having is not in line with the expectation also, possibly, right? Over a period of time, trust me, getting information from these people won't be difficult. It's your job to get that information and then go ahead with it and narrate to the journalist, and do the best, which is best for the organization you represent or the clients you represent. And yeah.
I was saying that these are also occasions when you need to use your discretion. I mean, discretion is something, discretion, patience, these are two things that actually help a COPCOM person or a PR person a lot, because you need these two in spades, because you need to know what needs to be escalated, what needs to be dealt with at that moment, and what can wait. And what Ushang was saying, I mean, if say, just to give an example, if something is sub judice, you really cannot go out and say anything. Even if you have the information, you cannot like really pass that information on to a journalist. Then you let it be a journalist's duty to figure it out from their sources of what they want. And then you don't want to commit to anything, because then you may be hauled up. I mean, and you don't want to be on the wrong side of the law. So there are these aspects also that come into the picture when you're dealing with, not everything would be very cut and dry and fit a template where this is what you can do, or this is what you cannot do, or you shouldn't do. So this is where discretion plays a huge role in what you decide.
It brings me to my next question, because many things are changing. Regulation is changing, technology is changing, companies are changing. So, how does all of this cumulatively change the role of corporate communications as well?
Just to give an example, many people think that generative platforms like chat gpts and all can come up with a press release. You just need to feed in the information. Just to give an example of how technology is changing, but to do that you need to at least put in stuff, you need to put in the kind of input to get the output that you desire. That is where you still need human intelligence.
What I feel is chat GPT or any generative platforms make any content you give them very average. You give them a poor quality content, they will make it average. You give them excellent content, they will make it average. So it will help all those people who may not have expertise, but it will make experts average. What do you guys think? What's your opinion?
I mean, I definitely think so, because uh, just to give an example, because of the age gap, and in organizations, people who were born in the 90s, they are coming in. They are now in their first jobs. I mean, someone who's in their early 20s, like 21, 22. These people, because they are digital natives when they were born, for them reading or writing is mostly on screen. I mean, their writing would mostly be messages or not even emails, I would say. So when it comes to them to create content, actually, and I'm not saying specifically for from the point of view of PR or COPCOM, but generally to just come up with something to write, that whole process is something that they cannot believe, that they actually have to press keys for words to come, and they have to think before to type in the word. So there are times, I mean, when they have asked me and said in absolute amazement, saying, "Oh, you have typed out this 400 word thing all by yourself. You thought of this press release all by yourself and you wrote that." And I was like, yeah, that's how things are supposed to be. But yeah,
Nice. So they may consider you
Ushang,
old.
what
For
is your
them, it's like
perspective?
कि
Yeah.
everything will be prompted to me. Like even on Gmail, if you're writing an email, text are prompted to
Yeah.
complete your sentences. Ushang, what do
Yeah,
you
so
think? How
I
is
actually
Copcom role
put it
changing?
questions like, how does it all come into your head?
It is, of course, changing. As you said, that regulatory changes come in, there are technological changes which come in. The organization where you work, there are lots of changes which are happening on a daily basis. Wherever any one of us works, there are lots of changes which happen. See, I just strongly believe that these changes which are also happening, not really sudden. It's not something that today you woke up and the world has changed. It is something which has been happening gradually. So even when we talk about technology becoming very important when it comes from the corporate communication space as well, or as you guys are mentioning, the use of AI towards generating content and so on, that has been happening over a period of time. Now what I strongly believe is, like, during this period also there were ample opportunities which people get to upskill themselves. 3 years back or 4 years back, honestly, I didn't know what social media management would be or how to use it. And like, if somebody would come and tell me that, okay, you need to do a strategy around it, I will literally throw a fit, right? I mean, I don't know what to do. But then you realize over a period of time, it's all about just the social media assets which you want to use, and your content needs to be curated in such a way that interest generates interest for the audience, right? So you need to upskill somewhere on that particular element as well. So maybe develop your social media management skills. Crisis management or crisis communication is another one. Again, it a crisis also happens over a period of time. It does not, like, very rarely it will happen like sudden scenarios where you can't do much about it. But where things happen over a period of time, of course you need to upskill yourself in terms of understanding also. A very important thing which I believe is, you need to stay up to date about your industry, at least which you are working on. If I'm working on an NBFC client as a PR professional, or a banking client or as a PR professional, or a comms professional, I'm a part of an organization, at least I need to focus on understanding about that particular industry. I mean, I don't really need to understand about pharma and rocket science per se, but at least know about my own industry, to try to be updated about that particular industry you are working for or representing, right? That is something I think is very important. And lastly, maybe you need to network, connect with people who are like-minded. You go to webinars, do go to conferences, speak with journalists, and there's lots of information. There is lots of there's lots of things which we can learn by just talking with other people, right? So everyone is learning something new every now and then, and just through communication we can learn these things. So of course there are lots of changes which are happening, but these are gradual in nature. So, and as you said, right, you put poor content in an AI tool, it will make it average. So it's great if poor content is being put and it's being made average, rather than great content being put and brought to an average level, right? So it's very important you stay up to date, read on your industry per se, about your organization, your competitors, and so on, and then try to work on content, and you will be able to come out with compelling narratives which will also be of interest to the journalists.
The best learnings come from your rivals. I mean, and again, going back to sports, I mean, Sachin Tendulkar obviously was doing his own practice and nets, but obviously he was also watching Brian Lara bat to pick up things that are relevant. So in our professions also, we need to keep an eye on our rivals, the good things that they are doing, learn from them, and also the mistakes that they are making, so that we can avoid the same mistakes, because someone else's learning is also your learning. So these are crucial aspects of keeping an eye on the industry and your rivals, and pick up from there what the good, the bad, and the ugly that they are doing, so that you learn from all of these things, because they all form your cumulative experience that you can then use to counsel your clients or your internal stakeholders, as the case may be.
So when it comes to learning, how do you go about? So Ushang mentioned that he speaks to people, learns from others. Sumanto also does the same thing. But given a chance, if you can do a certificate course, executive course, read a book maybe. So how would you go about deciding what course to do?
And it's about introspection. What you don't know, you have to answer this particular question yourself. Anything you learn is good learning. Focus on the industry you're part of course. Don't go around learning some random stuff for sure. At least spend your time learning about the industry you are part of. One of the things which therein, of course, I'll come to the courses and things which you are asking us to also maybe suggest. But it is very important that everyone should be humble enough to accept certain things they don't know. There's nothing wrong in accepting that I don't know something and learning it from somebody who understands it. There's no shame in it, right? If I don't know something, I just walk up to the person. I believe that person understands this. Try to learn it from them. It saves me lots of money, honestly. Like, I don't need to go to a distant learning degree for that. I would rather go to a social media expert, and that's what I've done.
When I'd like pick up a call and call Ushang and say, please tell me.
Yeah. So, it's as simple as that, right? Everyone has certain things they understand better than you do. So why not talk to each other? So
But
that's
doesn't it
that's
look
one of the
good on a
thing. I mean,
CV that you have done a certificate course or an executive course from a reputed institute? CV may, LinkedIn may, it looks good
Great.
there,
See, the
right?
point is, yeah, 100%, 100%, without a doubt. So I'm not taking away that. I'm like, please do it, no problem, right? I mean, there are lots of courses which are being offered. This Coursera or edX, so they have those courses. How to do digital PR or online PR or online communication, digital communication, and so on, right? So there are lots of these kind of things. And to like completely deep dive into it, there are colleges like, for say instance, Xavier's, right, who provide you courses into communications. These are like literally your certifications or degrees which you can get. ISB, IIM, so many are there who are providing distant learning opportunities as well. So surely you can do it. But then I strongly believe in the fact that you learn more by experience. You learn more by, like, having conversations with people rather than sitting in the classroom. I was a classic backbencher. I mean, what was happening in the classroom, I really don't know how many of these things I honestly understood. But I understood something which was, you communicate with people and you get it. It's nothing is very difficult over here. You just need to give it some time, show some interest, and you can learn through this, right? Of course, certificates and all these things help you when you are maybe applying for another job or shifting from your organization and stuff. But if your concepts, your concepts or your basic understanding of things are really weak, which you are doing as an individual, right, then how much do these courses help you? Because when you are talking about, say, a high level course, which is, and I'm assuming I've not done it, but an IIM will be giving a very extreme high level kind of a course or case studies and things like that. But if my basics are not clear, how is this going to help me, right? So it's very important that you do lots of self learning, speak with people who understand things better than you, at least in terms of where they come from or what they are doing on a daily basis to understand things. And surely do these courses, nothing wrong in it, but first get your concepts clear, work towards it, and then spend money on going through these courses. Otherwise they just become degrees which you have put on your LinkedIn and CV, and couple of tough questions come across and you don't have an answer.
Right,
I
right.
would draw actually a parallel from actually draw a parallel with journalism, because you don't need to do a journalism course to become a journalist. I mean, you can become a journalist without it. What a course basically does is it teaches you about the tools that you are going to use, and it kind of prepares you for that. But whether you end up being a good journalist or a bad journalist or an average journalist, doing a course or not doing a course has absolutely no bearing on that, I guess. So it's the same for COPCOM and for PR professionals as well. I mean, you can do a course to upscale something, but the basics, like having a nose for news, the sense of anticipating what can go wrong for your client and advising them, or against your company and advising them, preempting those things, those are things that you actually learn on the job, which I think are far more vital than doing a course or paying a fee to do a course and learning how to just write, say, a press release, for example, or these things, because these are things that you can pick on the way. What is paramount is having a nose for news, knowing how to deal with people, what stories to tell, how to make connections with journalists and with your organization, people in the organization. And when I'm say people, I don't necessarily mean the CXOs or the management people. A lot of the times, in my experience, crucial bits of information have actually come from people who are freshers or who are really young, because they are actually the people who are hands on with that particular aspect of what is going to happen. They may have the visibility before even it reaches to their department heads, just to give an example. So it helps to talk to your security people, talk to your people, your janitors, talk to people who maybe are in their first jobs, because their perspective, the way they deal with things, they may be from sales, they may be from IT, they may be from marketing, they may be from procurement, they may be from purchase, they can be from admin, whatever. Talk to these people and you learn what is happening around.
So, given the requirement that you should be a good communicator, people's person, unafraid of walking up to someone and talking to them, uh, how would people, journalists from non-business, non-English, non-metro background, break into PR or Copcom?
Again, there's a whole load of things that are going on. I mean, we are a vast country, and we are a country of billions of people with thousands of languages, with states that has dialects of their primary language and stuff like that. So there's plenty of opportunity, and everyone is looking to target. I mean, at the end of the day, PR or Copcom is targeted at revenues, at what the company is doing, telling your story, taking your story to as many people as possible, so that it helps your business grow. In doing that, there's a huge market for regional PR agencies. There are companies that would be making, say, iron rods, or that would be making concrete mixes, or that would be making cements. They are regional players, so they all need to tell their story. So there's a vast market outside of the metros as well. And I don't think knowing English or not knowing English is actually a barrier. I mean, obviously it helps, and on the same breath, it actually helps in a country like India, which is so diverse, to know as many languages as possible. Because if you're going to a market, I mean, for example, from my life, I mean, because I come from a Hindi speaking state, but I'm a born Bengali, so it gives me the advantage that I can correct or revise drafts at least in these two languages. So similarly, if you know more Indian languages, and especially in BFSI, in NBFCs, because they are dealing with people who are spread all across the country and their market is so vast, it helps if someone knows Gujarati, if someone knows Punjabi. So there's a market for there for people who may not know English at all.
Ushang, you think any personality traits really can help people from these privileged backgrounds, if I can use that term, urban, English speaking business journalist? If you're not that, can you do it?
See, Dhiren, I'll be very honest over here. The answer to it, this is you have to be extremely lucky. The fact of the matter is, I mean, as I started with saying, like, I consider myself very lucky because after my MBA, which was MBA in finance, I have nothing about journalism. I've not done any kind of course or any education. Like, I do not come from Xavier's Institute of, communications, or I've not done my, bachelor's of mass media or something. I was a BMS or Bachelor of Management Studies graduate who went ahead and did his MBA. And my first job, which I luckily got, was in 2009. So you remember it's a subprime crisis. So getting a job at that time was a privilege rather than anything else, right? And I began my career in a broking firm doing sales and marketing for their financial service, which was portfolio management service, right? And there was this one day I thought, I was looking at CNBC and I was like, wow, these guys speak on channel, and I also want to do this. It was just a whim, right? And I went ahead and applied. What worked in my favor was the fact that, of course, I was doing lots of reading on capital markets and so on as well. Maybe I got an opportunity, I got the call from them. Now, was I God sent? I don't think so. Was I, like, am I someone who is extremely good looking? I'm not Hrithik Roshan for sure. So I consider myself lucky to get that opportunity. But when you get the seat at the table, it's a big opportunity. You need to understand. We are talking about a population of 1.4 billion, of which 10 or 12 research analysts are there in a CNBC TV 18, right? And then, of course, the editors and so on, they are different people. But I'm saying joining as a management trainee also amongst such a vast population, you do need some level of luck, to be honest with you. But at the same time, all you can do is upskill yourself, read a lot, understand about the business a lot, and then attempt and try and meet more people. You go get a seat at the table, have discussions, and try to showcase your understanding of what you wish to do, or rather what is expected from you, and that's how you can make it through, right? And then I was very clear, I need to, wherever I go, whatever I do, I need to put in best of my efforts and leave the results to where they are going to go, right? I mean, I can't control the outcome, but I can control the journey, maybe, right? I mean, I can work towards it, do my best to the best of my ability. That's all I can say. But there is no set formula there. There is no set formula over here. I strongly believe, like, luck plays a crazy critical major role over here.
And I think to become lucky, you need to read a lot and meet a lot of people, learn from their mistakes as well as yours.
Of course. Of
Yeah.
course, of course. And see, that's what I'm saying, right? You may get the seat at the table, right? And out of so many people. But what do you do in that moment? That's the moment of truth, right? When you are sitting with an interviewer, what do you really do? And that's where the difference is going to come if you have gone well prepared for the interaction with your interviewer, right? So that is extremely critical, how much we prepare. Moving into comms also, I did so much of reading about the firm I was being interviewed by, right? I did so much of reading about the firms which are their direct competition and what do they do and things like that. So it is again, and that's what we learned. I mean, I personally learned from lots of new business pitches which were being done during my days with PR agencies, right? So you need to do lots of research about the organization you are pitching to. If you want to sell anything, you yourself need to know everything about that particular product or that service or offering, right? Without that, you can't convince somebody else to buy it. So when you're going in for an interview, of course it is luck or lots of good things on your CV which will make it attractive for the opposite person to consider. But there are tons of people with that kind of attractive CVs. No one of us is very special. So, but when you get the seat at the table, that's a moment of truth. Go well prepared, do lots of reading, do lots of research around yourself, the company you are willing to represent or wanting to represent, their competition, and then have conversations. It will possibly work out better as compared to, I'm God sent and just walking into a room filled with people who are going to interview you.
Right. So those were the questions I had in mind. And thank you very much, Sumanto and Ushang, for joining me. And I'm sure this will be very helpful for our audiences. Thanks for your time here.
Thank you so much,
Thank
and
you,
it's
Dhiren.
great to
Absolute pleasure
connect
for
over
having me.
this.
Thank you.
Yeah.